Sequels to greatness, be it in movies, musical albums, or video games, have an obvious uphill battle. Those sequels must contend with, if not eclipse, the fantastic nature of its predecessors, while also presenting a uniqueness that makes it have a reason to exist. The issue with a sequel attempting to match or outdo what came before it is made even worse by time. Some successors take years to come out, and a mixture of nostalgia and genre changes can make presenting a worthy successor even tougher. But then there are times when everything just clicks, and no matter how long between the original and the sequel, there's still a want to reunite with memorable protagonists and an interesting world. 16 years after the 6th generation release of Psychonauts, the minds behind its wacky world, including Tim Schafer of Grim Fandango fame, asked gamers to pitch in and help finance the long-awaited sequel. The fan loyalty made Schafer and Studio Double Fine's request rather easy to fulfill, though Microsoft had to financially assist as well. It would take another 5 years before gamers got their wish as Psychonauts 2 finally arrived with the promise of being everything the original was, and then some. My mind and body was strengthened to a point of no return when Psychonauts 2 arrived on the Xbox Game Pass. Taking control of Raz, a young former circus acrobat who ran away at the start of the first game in his quest to become a psychonaut, the player is tasked with the unbelievable, discovering the mole that exists in the international task force full of psychics known as the Psychonauts. Though the story is new, and Raz, who graduated from would-be Psychonaut to intern Psychonaut, has slightly grown, a majority of what made the original game so much fun returns here, including 3D platforming, hectic combat, and of course, collectibles. A majority of the worlds and playable sections of Psychonauts 2 comes courtesy of entering the mind of certain subjects. In these minds exist puzzles, places to jump on and through, enemies to combat, and hundreds upon hundreds of collectibles. Thanks to a mix of solid platforming controls and Raz's abilities, players looking to complete this game 100% will spend hours just moving through world to world, more times than once. Most likely due to missing that lone Figment collectible or a secret golden nugget that helps level up Laz's intern level and gives him skill points or intern credits for upgrading his powers. Due to the hefty amount of collectibles, I took solace in simply finishing the story and its few side missions after nearly 20 hours of play. There's definitely an intent of getting all those collectibles and reach Raz's max intern level, attain 33 pins, and figure out how to communicate with wild animals. There were several things that made Psychonauts so memorable, but nothing the original game offered made it more fantastic than the story of these weird-looking characters discovering the depths of a subconscious reality while attempting to save the world. With the world of Psychonauts disrupted by the potential return of a monstrous destroyer, not to mention the aforementioned mole story, it's up to Raz and his colleagues and mentors to stop impending doom. Though the narrative sounds unremarkable, it's anything but uninspired, mostly thanks to the writers not being afraid to stare into the depths of mental exhaustion and frustration and work through said issues. One of the best aspects about Raz's character is the fact he isn't someone who can solve the world's problems, actually causing a few along the way. Instead, Raz provides a helping hand for his conflicted allies and even some of his enemies to find their own way to self-restoration. The plot's twists and turns are done exceptionally well, and the new NPCs have memorable personalities and moments without getting too much on-screen time to fully flesh out said non-playable characters. The inner turmoil going through the characters associated with each level is greatly different from one another, such as Dr. Hollis Forsyth's stages focusing on her gambling addiction in, what else, a casino. Legendary member of the Psychic Six, Bob Zanotto's alcoholism puts him on an island unto himself both mentally and figuratively physically by disassociating himself from his former comrades. The dedication and emphasizing what's going on through each character's world just adds to a masterfully told story that really challenges, if not outdoes, just how wonderful what was displayed in the prequel. Of course, with this being a sequel, the developers did an admirable job of recapping the big moments from Psychonauts, but there will be a few things that goes over someone's head if they haven't played the first game in this now series. Though there are a lot of cutscenes and talking, the gameplay is hefty just like it was in Psychonauts. Platforming is mostly fantastic thanks to both the level designs and Raz's powers. Unlike the original game, the powers Raz attains, including levitation, mental connection, and of course telekinesis, all play a role in both aspects of gameplay, platforming, and combat. For example, using mental connection when traversing a world will allow Raz to move between high floating dots that most likely will take him to a platform or even a secret area. In combat, mental connection works as a tether that yanks enemies closer for potential melee attacks or side blast. Not similar to its predecessor, all of the powers can work for Raz's benefit in traversal and battle, unlike something like invisibility in Psychonauts. World building and combat is accented by some of the wild boss designs and interesting requirements to make it through a stage, like cooking up several meals in a game show environment full of hazards. But there are some glaring issues in regards to the game's platforming, combat, and boss battles, with the latter succumbing to the same setup for each battle. Though bosses have different moves and strategies, the boss battles are designed too similar to one another, with gigantic foes tossing objects that must be avoided and, at times, used against the massive foe. Like many 3D platformers, the camera will cause issues for the player if they haven't lined it up perfectly for a jump, or during a more high-speed section that the player may not understand what to do until it's too late, resulting in a checkpoint restart. Combat presentation is definitely the game's weakest aspect. Players can only equip 4 powers at a time, and on a console controller, these powers are connected solely to the bumpers and triggers. Players can change powers on the fly by holding up on the D-pad and swapping said abilities, but it feels cumbersome during platforming moments and made worse when a battle suddenly starts and Raz doesn't have the appropriate powers equipped, leaving him open for an attack before the player can recognize they're using clairvoyance instead of side blast. There is a hard lock-on system, but using the hard lock-on really hinders movement and counter-strikes when surrounded by the mounting number of enemies that grow more profound as the game gets into its final act. The soft lock-on is fine a majority of the time, but manually aiming in the heat of battle may result in situations like Raz's side blast striking nothing except air. Leveling up is strictly tied to exploration. The plethora of collectibles all have a reason to exist, including the nearly 1,500 2D line drawings known as figments that, when attained at certain benchmarks like 100 or 500, will assist Raz in leveling up his abilities. Nuggets of Wisdom automatically increases Raz's intern level by 1 rank, while offering a skill point. The way to upgrade Raz's health is by collecting half-a-mind objects. Brains split in half that need both halves combined to add another brain to Raz's health bar. The pig-like memory vaults possess slideshow reels for further character backstories. Emotional baggage can only be opened upon finding the corresponding baggage tag, but doing so will give Raz a good amount of the game's currency, Psychonauts. There are also purchasable items that can assist Raz or give him a little cosmetic appeal, like the side challenge markers in regards to the prior. Markers combined with side challenge cards will increase Raz's intern level a full point. Though everything has a reason to exist in the game's world, the collectible amount total may be too overwhelming or even boring for those who aren't completionists, but want to have the most sturdy Raz possible. One way to help Raz survive or be thrifty is by equipping pins. Replacing the merit badge system from Psychonauts, pins are bought from the in-game shop and can provide benefits for Raz beyond boosting his powers. Purchased pins range from increasing the damage of Raz's melee attacks to lowering the prices of all items. There are some drawbacks in regards to pins. One is the obvious inability to have more than 3 pins equipped at one time, meaning sacrifices will be made to use the most optimum pin set during whatever situation. Pins also have intern level requirements, and even if the player has enough Psychonauts, they can't use a pin until Raz reaches the right intern level. Technically, the game is a mixed bag on 8th generation consoles. Experiencing it on an Xbox One saw frame rate drops, character textures taking some time to load, a few hard crashes, and extensive loading times. 9th generation consoles reportedly don't have the same issues. Beyond the problems is a marvelous animation style that really allowed the developers to complete their vision, obviously hindered by hardware limitations nearly 20 years ago. The sounds from the music to literally every voice actor are mixed fantastically, while complemented by impeccable writing that brings out the best in its voice actors. The fact this game exists is almost a miracle. What isn't a miracle is the fact the developers embraced what made the first game so memorable, while mostly improving on the lacking qualities of its almost 20-year-old predecessor. Psychonauts 2 does well in providing fans of 3D platformers a strong experience, with the additions of a memorable story and a pretty solid combat system. Fans who have waited the 16 years between Psychonauts and its successor will walk away so satisfied, while gamers who have no emotional connection to what came before Psychonauts 2 should, most likely, enjoy a majority of everything this game has to offer. For those on the fence or don't necessarily know if the quirky little world is what they'll enjoy, Psychonauts 2 is free on Microsoft's Game Pass service. It is imperative to play until you reach the casino boss, because by then a player will know if this game is for them. After the long wait, Psychonauts 2 is, thankfully, the video game equivalent of ramming down a freshly cooked, highly enjoyable meal and giving it a sarcastic grade of surprisingly adequate.
So, what we did was, we took an egg
Boring.
and we popped it into the water.
Pedestrian!
Then Chef had the idea to withhold the salt at just the right moment to create a sense of longing within the yolk, if you will.
You what?
We think it really improves the nose feel of the composition.
Compelling.
Bon appetit.
Surprisingly acceptable.